Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming along. Very excited to have you all here. I'm excited also, I guess, because this has been the topic that we've had the highest registrations for since we began doing our Real Learners webinars a few months ago. Even though I guess this one is something of a follow-on to one we did previously, which was about how to run a successful workshop. But I guess what I'm trying to do here is to make more explicit the links between actually creating a workshop that does its job versus doing a workshop that gets the job ticked off. So what we're looking to do today is to say, what are the tips, what are the tricks, what's the magic, what are the little things that are involved in being able to create an experience for people that is geared towards them not only enjoying it, potentially doing more than enduring it, but actually learning from it. What are the things that we can do that actually switch the neocortex of their brain on so that they do a lot of thinking when they're in these moments. So basically what I'm going to do today is try to take a little bit of my own advice and to provide a learning experience that I hope is one that's a powerful one for you, and I'm going to do it against the odds. So if you can hear a little bit of noise in the background here, it's because the tree chipper has decided to set up on webinar afternoon outside of our office here. So you might hear a little bit of background noise, but hopefully it won't interfere too much. I think that for most people, I guess this is when I do talk about why we want to run workshops and why we want to do it well. It's because I guess in my experience, even when I would go back to my time as a school principal, whenever I asked a teacher, and I always think that this is quite ironic, because whenever I asked a teacher to run a workshop or to run a little seminar about something that they have some expertise in or that they'd done some training in, this is probably the face that I most often saw. And I think it's ironic because they're the educators, and they're more than comfortable in front of a room of 30 kids. But if I ask them to jump in front of their own staff or in front of people that they haven't yet met, panic is probably the look that overcomes them best. And I guess that notion of panic, I'm often reminded of a quote that Simon Sinek said, where he said that panic causes tunnel vision. It makes you focus very intently on one thing at a time. And that's actually the purpose in our bodies of panic showing up or fear showing up, is so that we focus on a singular thing and pay attention to one thing at a particular time. Our ability to take in the environment around us when we panic or when we're feeling fear is highly compromised, because the job of panic and fear is to keep you safe. So the whole notion is that if an axe-wielding maniac came through the door of your office this afternoon, is that panic and fear would grip you, because there's really not much point you paying much more attention to our webinar this afternoon while the dude with the axe is present. So panic causes you to tunnel your vision and to get really narrow. What we need to understand is that panic and fear are best reserved for the axe-wielding maniac, or for the dog that's about to bite you, or for the car that's careening towards you, so that you can only pay attention to one thing, act quickly, get it done. Panic and fear needn't be the things that we experience when we're asked to run a workshop. In fact, what we need to do is calmly accept that this is a position of danger. It's a position we're going to be put in where we're going to feel a little uncomfortable. We're going to be outside of that well-famed comfort zone. And when we can calmly accept that this is just a slightly uncomfortable experience, we can actually do what Sinek says here, which is to assess the situation and see the options. See that we do have plenty of things that we could do here that are outside the normal practices when it comes to organising a workshop. You see, our stress and our panic and our anxiety comes from the fact that we have sat through countless bad workshops. And we think, first of all, I guess one of the things that happens sort of just below the consciousness as we're creeping into the subconscious is we're thinking to ourselves, oh my goodness, we pull that face on the screen. Oh my goodness, do I really have to run one of those things? And we think it's the only thing we can do. We've tunneled our vision and made it very narrow. And we plan to deliver something that's bad. And frankly, we should never do that in business if we're looking to establish some sort of competitive advantage. And the anxiety that comes from having to not only plan for something bad comes from two places. One, it comes from that notion that I'm being asked to do something that's going to be a bad product. And secondly, it comes from the absence of a plan. So what we know is that, most anxiety is caused by the absence of knowing what's going to happen next. And so what we want to do is make a decision. First of all, I'm going to create something good. I'm going to get myself, and this is one of the fundamental things about that I need you to understand when stepping into a workshop, is that what I want you to do is to eradicate from your vernacular the notion that you're going to deliver a workshop. You're not going to deliver anything. Milkmen deliver things, and mailmen deliver things, and midwives deliver things, but you're not gonna. Your job is not to show up and drop off some content and then run away. Your job is to create transformation. And that's going to require you to think a little less about your content and a little more about the experience that you're creating. I often speak to 3 A's when it comes to building a workshop. First of all is the content going to be accessible? That means, do I create experiences in the 90 minutes or even a full day that I've got with these people? Do I create experiences that kind of allow them to climb into the content, to get it, to really, have I provided a scaffold for them that this is the bit you get first, but then you're going to use that and get onto this bit, and you're going to have success after success after success with the content, such that you go, oh wow, I am just so right in the middle of this now. And understanding a small bit of content deeply as a result of a workshop, I would contend, is a far more productive outcome than having accessed an enormous amount of content in a shallow or superficial kind of way. So I want you to obsess a little less about content and more about, am I providing an opportunity for people to achieve mastery and deep learning? And as a result, am I creating a little bit of capacity building and transformation as a result? So the first one is, am I providing access for people to the content? The second thing that I'm going to speak to today, and you'll notice this in one of my magic tricks, I'm going to present 10 magic tricks to you today, is that we need to be able to assess it. So we need to be able to make sure it's accessible, then we need to make sure it's accessible. How will we know? How will we tell if people have learned effectively at the end of the lesson? Will we know what progress they've made? Will we know what gaps they still have? And will we know what opportunities are in front of us to be able to have them even to take that learning out and to spread it further across your organisation? And then the third thing is actionable. So we need our learning to be accessible, we need it to be accessible, and we need it to be actionable, which means that at the end of your workshop, do your people go, great, nice, done, finished? Or do they go, I just cannot wait to go and do something with this? Even better, do they declare as part of your workshop what it is that they're going to do? So that's kind of where we're targeting today, and I want you to keep that in mind as we move forward. It's a lot. I today am trying in a short period of time to force feed you, and I do understand that when I'm going to give you 10 magic tricks, like I said, and that can feel a little overwhelming, that you can sometimes have a very narrow view, very tunneled view of what I'm going to do when I build a workshop, and it's usually build content. We fill up a bunch of PowerPoint slides and we hope people will receive it on the other end, and that's, like I said, that's a distribution model that we should be rejecting. We're into transformation, but that said, I get that I'm going to cram a lot of knowledge into the next 45 minutes or so for you. So I do want to acknowledge that, and also say to you, I'm going to give you an opportunity at the end, a handful of different ways to be able to go further with this. So please stick around to the end of the webinar. I'll make sure that we look after you and we deal with the overwhelm. Okay, so in terms of participation today, we have somebody who's leading the webinar today. I'll take that role. I'll have a crack at it. I'm apparently supposed to be the expert. I better deliver some expert content and some transformational experience to you. But I need you to step up too. I need you to be what we call in the education caper teachable. And the number one way that people make themselves teachable is that they get active. They share my ambition to reject the delivery model of education. It's just my job to dump some content on you and then get out of here and get on with the rest of our days. Being teachable means that you become that model student who asks questions and seeks clarification and contextualizes this knowledge in your own workplace. The cool part about the teachable kids, that they're the ones that also are of huge benefit to other people, because they're often asking the questions that other people are already dying to ask. So I would really love you to be teachable today. So in this webinar today, I want to give you a couple of ways you can get involved. Number one is that you have absolutely every opportunity to use the hand up function in the control panel. This is a regular classroom. I see a couple of names in there today that I've seen before in our webinars who'll be familiar with this. So you have the hand up function. This is just like a classroom. If you whack your hand up, I can unmute you. I've got a little button here that allows me to do that. And I can make sure that you can contribute verbally and ask your question or make your contribution. I would love it if you would do that today, so that this is genuine about not being that delivery mode of education. Relax, I will continue on if you don't put your hand up, but I'd love you to. And the other thing you can do is to ask questions. So whether it's a question about the content today and what, if you want to make sense further of what I'm delivering, or is it okay to do this, then whack it in there. I'll check it periodically, and I'll make an absolute point of checking at the end of the webinar too. But I also will try to make sure that if you do throw something in there, that I stop and pay attention to it. So know that there's ways that you can contribute today, and I really want you to take advantage of them. All right, let's get into our tricks. I've got 10. Number one is that I want you to think about the beginning of your learning activity, your learning experience for your people. The beginning of your workshop. There are such ritualized and unhelpful routines that we have at the start of most workshops. They usually begin with introducing ourselves or having someone else introduce us. I've gotten to the point where I often in my workshops ask the person who's introducing me that day, or has been assigned to it on the agenda, to just hold off. I don't want them to actually get up there and give the 3-minute version of my CV. And the main reason for that is that nobody cares. To be honest, nobody gives a rat's what I've done in the past. They only care what I'm going to do in the next couple of hours. So what I want to do is to create an immediate impression that is outside the norm. Anybody who teaches martial arts knows that what you do with the start of a martial arts lesson is that you don't begin with, okay guys, today we are going to learn to kick. Here are the 5 things that you will need to know if you're going to learn how to kick effectively. What martial artists do at the start of the lesson is we start kicking. And so we get the bags out and we have a go and we look at our own technique and we ask ourselves questions, and then afterwards we look to start to fill gaps with content and with coaching and with expertise. So martial artists really get that. There's a fabulous program that I've been running with secondary schools around Australia for many years now called Rock and Water, and it also picks up this activity, this notion, of starting with activity. And I often do an activity with them called Chinese boxing at the beginning of a workshop. And it's where you get 2 people to stand close to each other with their hands up in the middle but not touching. There are 2 moves. There's a rock move and there's a water move. So the rock move means you slap quickly on the person's hands in front of you to try and get them off balance. It's a bit of a push, bit of a whack. It doesn't hurt anybody, but it can catch people off guard sometimes. And there's a water move, which is where you back off quickly. You drop your hands away when you think the other person's going to use their rock move, and you might get them off balance that way. And the first person who moves their feet is the loser in that battle. You try to get your opponent unbalanced. But what it teaches people immediately is that I expect you to be involved. I expect a little bit of rock from you. I expect you to push. I expect you to get up. I expect you to even argue with me. And I also expect a little bit of water from you. I expect a bit of balance. I expect you to understand that there are times when I need you to just back off and give other people the opportunity to participate as well. So it's a wonderful metaphor. I also sometimes begin my keynote presentations and my workshops with a little bit of a poking of fun at myself, rather than tell people that I'm a former school principal and rattle through the various places that I was a principal. What I do is I walk in, I say, "Good morning, everyone," and with that moment, people tend to say, "Good morning," and I go, "Well, that's pretty unimpressive, isn't it? And I teach them the way that we said good morning at my last school that I worked at, a place called Rosebery Primary School. And I teach them that what we did at Rosebery was not give the boring good morning that Australian principals have given for 200 years. You know the one where you go, good morning, Mr. Voigt. We did it differently at our school. I got up and I said, we always say good morning with excitement and enthusiasm because that's how we feel to be in our wonderful school. And then we clap twice. And so I would say to everyone, good morning, everyone, clap, clap. And I would expect back from them, good morning, Mr. Voigt, with the same excitement and enthusiasm, and that they would clap twice. And I get people up and I just start, so let's learn to say good morning the right way. And it's nothing more than a signal to people that I expect you to be active in this workshop. And if I begin my workshop with activity, I have declared straight away that working with me means we get off our backsides, we create, we do. We don't sit passively by waiting for the milk or the mail or even the baby to be delivered to us. We're involved here in this workshop, and I find that a highly engaging thing for people. It's funny though, they don't always tell you that they appreciate it straight up. So I always make the joke when I ask everyone to get up, we're going to learn the way that Rosebery Primary School said good morning, that, there's like, oh, well, people, oh, no. And I say, yeah, I know, this is awful, isn't it? It's going to be interactive. I didn't know that. But the truth is that people remember far more after the workshop the things they did than the things you said. So my job is to create transformation and activity within them. Magic trick number 1, begin your lesson. Begin your workshop, not with your CV, but with getting people to do something. Trick number 2 is to declare intentions. Give them a peek. Give them a little look behind the curtain at what you're up to that day. I had a good friend the other day who was bemoaning to me that they had to do a couple of days of leadership training at their work. And she said that, what the biggest problem was? She goes, we heard lots of stories and we filled out a few worksheets and we did activities. And at the end of the day, I thought, what do we do that for? And so she goes, it was kind of entertaining, but I don't know why we did it. It's really important that you actually tell people why they're there. You tell them 2 things. First of all, you tell them what your learning intentions are. You tell them what they'll be learning about at that moment. What that kind of does is prime them, gets them ready for that expectation. When people don't know what it is that you're trying to teach them, they sort of sit there waiting and wondering. And the truth is that their neocortex isn't cued into the content that you're trying to deliver. They're actually using the thinking part of their brain to wonder what you're going to do next. They're trying to predict, they're guessing. And we would prefer they weren't doing that, but they were actually cued in to the important bits of content that you're going to deliver in the workshop. So the first part is what we call declaring your learning intention. So I tell people straight away, you know what, we're learning about this today. Today is about communication. And the reason we need to know about communication is this. Did you notice there that one of the things that in those couple of sentences I addressed is the why? Tell people why they need it. Tell people why it's useful. I bemoan so much in the work that I do with schools, and I still do plenty of work with them, that we obsess so much over what the kids need to know and how they need to demonstrate it, but we never actually pause to tell them why. We never fill that relevance gap. We never actually create motivation for them to have a go. And so that's what declaring your learning intentions can do. And the other thing I like to be able to declare is success criteria, which means that you look at what would it look like at the end of the workshop if this works well. And so I tell people that by the end of this workshop, what you will be able to do is to be able to deploy a minimum of 3 of my magic tricks to make your next workshop far more magical and engaging and transformational for people. That's my intention today. That's my success criteria, is that you could do as a minimum at least 3. The next step up would be that you have perhaps practiced one of them. And the next step up again would be that you have identified which of the magic tricks I'm presenting to you today is the one that is kind of your superpower, is the one that you're brilliant at. And you might even be able to help other people with that superpower. So hugely important, I think, to get off on the front foot by telling people why they're there and what success will look like at the end of that learning experience. Magic trick 3 is that I want you to verb up. One, the first mistake that we often make and when we're developing a workshop is that we don't ask anything. We just tell. We just get up there and we just make our speech as awesome as we can make it. And that's a mistake, because unless you are pure rock star on the stage, unless at the front of a room, unless you can hold the room's attention, Jerry Seinfeld kind of level, then you're going to struggle to have that content land. So the first mistake we make is that we don't ask people to do anything. The second mistake we make is that if we do ask people to do things, they tend to be verbs from the left-hand side of this page. So what we do is we ask them to regurgitate what we've already said in a group, or just have a chat about it, or can you write down the 3 points that I made about this, or can you summarize this? It's low-level thinking to be playing down in this knowledge and understand space. If you can look at those headings at the top of this Bloom's taxonomy chart of verbs that you could use in a learning environment. What I want to encourage you to do is, sure, you may start by working at the left-hand side of this, but my determination, particularly in an adult level environment, particularly if you're talking about trying to train people at an executive level, is to engage people who are smart, to engage people who really know their stuff. You've got to get over to the right-hand side. You've got to ask them to criticize things. You've got to ask them to make decisions. You've got to ask them to, I love asking people to discriminate. I love asking them to eliminate the 2 worst ideas and identify the 2 best ideas from a list of possibilities. You ask them to compose new things. You ask them to construct something, to make something. Or you might ask them to rearrange things so that they're better, that they can actually, that things can be more accessible to other people. So what I want you to do, first of all, is to make the decision that you'll ask a lot of questions, which is about, I guess, educationally saying that I'm going to get all Socrates on everyone. I'm going to ask a lot of questions. And the next thing you're going to do is I'm going to ask good ones, which means that you're taking more verbs from the evaluate and create column that you can see on your screen than you are from the knowledge and understand column. I guess the next thing, I've asked you to verb up here, and what I want you to do in trick 4 is to think up, and that is to ask people, demand more of people than that reception of knowledge. So I love to use this thinking frame when I'm working with people, which is the KTFD thinking frame. A lot of people have referred to it. Not a lot of people deploy it. They say they want to do it because they think it's a funky little thing that gets everybody's attention, but they don't actually do it in the way that they deliver workshops. So to work you through these 4, the K is for knowledge. So sure, sometimes there are things that you need to know because you need a base. You need a base of knowledge that you can actually work from to be able to move forward, sure. But what we're going to do is fill that gap as quickly as we can. We're going to make sure that you've got enough knowledge to step up to the T, which is to think. So knowledge is very concrete, it's very formed, it's quite absolute. Your thoughts aren't so much concrete, formed or absolute. What we want to do is to make sure that we create a learning experience for people that they walk away from going, oh, this is kind of under my skin a bit here. I always say I like to create the learning experience that annoys people at 1:30 in the morning and they feel like they've got to get up and write something down because finally it makes sense and they've got an idea about what they're going to do in their workplace afterwards. So I like to make sure that my learning experience is about making people think as well. F is that they have to make them feel something. I'm going to talk about this a little further as we go, but the learning experience without affect without feeling is the killer of engagement. There's a hierarchy when it comes to the feelings that you should experience in a learning environment. 3 steps, three rungs in that hierarchy. Number 1 rung is positive affect. So if you can feel curious, if you can feel happy, if you can feel even joy or laughter in a learning experience, your ability to absorb content is magnified. You take more in. You take more in from those really positive learning experiences that being in an environment that just feels good. The second rung is negative affect, which means that you hated it and you thought the presenter was an absolute dickhead and it really annoyed you and you thought that was absolute nonsense. The third rung that's below negative is no affect, which means it's better if they hate you than if they're bored, if they couldn't care less about you or you're having no impact on them. So I am determined about affect. I take enormous risks in my workshops to try and get people to feel something, because even if they hate me, it's better than them feeling nothing. So I'm really determined about taking a bit of a risk when it comes to creating feelings in my learning environment. And then the D is my favourite. And I tell people this. Sometimes my success criteria is just that you will make one very important D, which is to decide, a decision. And I often point out that the etymology behind the word decide is the same as the etymology behind some nasty words, homicide and regicide and genocide and suicide, because the side means you kill off. And when you decide, what you do is you kill off choice. So it means that in a learning environment, people have actually got themselves to a point where they go, you know what, for the investment of my time in this workshop, something's got to change. And this is what's going to change. And I always say that if you can create an experience where by the end of your workshop, someone publicly declares their D, actually just turns to a colleague and says, this is what I'm going to do, then it wraps two things around that decision. It wraps accountability, because, I don't know about you, but I've quite regularly promised myself that I'm going to lose 5 kilo quietly, but I don't tell anyone, because then I'm not accountable. But when I say it out loud, and I tell my wife Anthea that I'm going to lose some more kilo, I'm going to lose 5 kilo, I'm going to do it by getting up early and doing some exercise, then she's going to be digging her elbow into me when that alarm clock goes off in the morning and saying, get up. So it wraps some accountability, but also support. People can help you to be able to make that decision a reality in terms of behaviour. So working people towards a really good decision by the end of a workshop is something that is a fervent determination of mine. Magic trick 5 is what I want you to do is to lose the idea that somebody leaving a workshop with a copious amount of notes is a success. I don't know about you. Every time I go to a workshop, if I go to a workshop at a conference or at a hotel, I always notice that when I walk in and you get to that table and it's got or even if you get to that plush little chair, it's got, usually they give you an 8-page notepad and a pen that's been marked in the name of the hotel or the conference centre. Sometimes I take really important notes, and the truth is that note-taking is a wonderful skill for being able to summarise mentally the content that's being delivered to you. But then I have a problem. And my problem is that I get out to my car after the workshop, and in my hands I have my wallet, and I'm one of those people that has the ridiculously sized wallet such that it causes me a back problem when I put it in the back pocket and keep it there. I also am one of those people, I've got my keys, I've got my phone because I want to plug that in because I want to listen to my podcast or my radio station or my music while I'm driving the car. I've got my backpack because I often carry that around with my diary and my laptop in there as well. I've got my sunglasses, I'm trying to juggle those as well. And now I have this 8-page notepad and a brand new pen that I've stolen from the conference centre. And I don't know what to do with it. So what I tend to do is to put it in the pocket on the back of my driver's seat as I'm clambering awkwardly and clumsily into the car, and I never look at it again. So I made some notes short. So the process of taking notes has been reasonably helpful, but the opportunity to refer to them again has just been destroyed by hiding them in the back of the driver's seat of my car. I don't provide in my workshops an 8-page notepad and a pen. And I'm very explicit when I'm running a workshop that I don't want them placed on the table. And the main reason for that is that I don't want that phenomena for people. I even encourage people, just be careful if you're using your iPad to take notes, because the truth about your iPad is that you might take notes in a wonderful app like Evernote, which allows you to capture these elaborate records of your workshop that you've participated in. And then I save them, which is effectively putting them in the pocket on the back seat of the driver's seat, because I save them and then I never look at them again. I provide postcards, so these can be knocked up really easily. You could do them yourself, even on like a PowerPoint slide, whip them off to Vistaprint, get them done, and you'll have them in your hands in a week before your workshop. You could go to the trouble of using a site like Freelancer to get someone, or Fiverr, to get someone offshore to be able to very cheaply knock together something that looks really good for you. I went to a bit more trouble with these and found quotes that emphasise the key behaviours that I expect to see behind great leaders of learning. And then what I want you to do is to take these cards, and I want you to only write on the back of them the knowledge, the thinking, the feelings, and more importantly, the decisions that you need to make and that you need to act upon when you leave, because you'll need a reminder about them. And I honestly marvel at how often I make the joke sometimes when I'm with people that, the psychology behind giving people some pretty postcards rather than an 8-page notepad is I think that it'll be harder for them to chuck it out as they walk out the door. And then I say, I know that I'm underestimating many of you drastically at that point, that they're very capable. But I marvel at how often I go back to someone's office and I'll see 1 or 2 of these postcards pinned up on a wall because they made an important decision on the back of it. And they needed a cool little colourful reminder that they had made that decision. They needed to be able to see something every day that reminded them that things were different as a result of my workshop, which I am very fervently trying to create trying to have as a pivotal moment in their life. So these are some of the postcards that I make available to people, because I'm going to flip this notion that just because you wrote lots of pages at notes that you had a successful workshop. For me, a successful workshop is one where you made decisions, you declared it publicly, you wrote it on the back of a postcard, and you stuck it up as a reminder in the place that we might refer to as being the coalface, so that you can actually do it. You can actually change something as a result of the workshop. And to be honest, all the notes in the world doesn't change anything. Magic trick, it appears I've lost number 6 there, so I've gone straight to number 7. My apologies for that, I've lost a slide. Magic trick number 7 is to narrow your content and broaden your affect. So as I mentioned before, what I'm trying to get you to do is to understand that the most transformational workshops are the ones where people feel something, where they connect. And so connect is one of the very important affects, or very important experiences that I want people to have, to notice about my workshops. I even get to the point where I tell people that, when I talked before about learning intentions and success criteria, that one of my intentions is not to focus on content. So I say to them, I don't know what you're going to learn today. I'm going to give you some stuff that you could learn, but I don't know what it is that you're going to learn. My ambition is around 5 key non-content based learning intentions. And I'll tell people that number 1 is that I'm trying to inspire them. At this point, somebody rolls their eyes and they say, oh, great, he thinks he's Tony Robbins or something like that, does he? And that's not what it's all about. Inspiration, particularly for Australian people, doesn't come from a rah-rah speaker. It comes from the sharing of story. This is actually something that I've come to believe we've picked up from our Indigenous brothers and sisters, who don't even tell you the point of something. They just tell you the story and expect you to work out the point. So intent are they on story. But I think that Australians have picked that up, and if you want to make a key point, you'd better be able to contextualise it in some sort of story or some sort of anecdote or experience that you've had, so that then I can feel confident enough in your credibility to go and have a go at it myself, to go and create my own story. So inspiration for people comes from story. I talk next about the notion that what I want to do is challenge people. And the challenge I often put to them is that this workshop is not about my delivery, it's about your practice as a leader of learning in your organisation. And because you're busy, I don't want you to miss the opportunity to put that on the table in the safe company of some wonderful colleagues, and to examine which parts of that practice are working for you, which aren't, and which just need a tweak. And we're going to do something about that by making some really important decisions. So I tell them that I'm going to inspire them, but then I'm going to challenge them as well. I then go a step further and I tell them that my 3rd non-content based learning intention is that I'm going to provoke them. Because to be honest, it does my head in that I reckon way too many workshops are nice. The presenter tries to create an experience where most people already agree with them because they already know most of what they're saying. The presenter is trying very hard to make other people feel clever, but not teaching them anything new, and not leading them on a path that will encourage them to discover something new. And I think that that's a travesty when presenters do that. So I always tell people that I'm there to provoke. I'm there to pick a fight, and but I will fight fair. So if I say anything in a workshop that people disagree with, I'll say, let's have that fight. And I am absolutely prepared to lose that fight if you are. And that's the only rules that we have around fighting fair. I tell people that I want to strengthen them. So I often say that my workshops are geared around not telling them that everything they thought they knew about how to learn and how to lead learning or how to run a workshop is useless. Yeah, it's often really good. And we want them to keep that. We don't want them to throw out the stuff that's really good. In fact, what we would like them to do is to move from doing it a bit implicitly to doing it explicitly, to really, being able to, because if they can attach language to what they're doing, then other people can know about it. So that's what that strength and intention's all about. And then the last one I do is I say I'm going to connect them. So I'm going to provide opportunity for them to solve problems and to create new opportunities together as colleagues, collectively. And then I ask people often, which one of these 5, if I did that horrible scenario of a gun to your head and said, you're only getting one, which one do you really need to learn as an adult at your optimum level? And some people tell me they need the inspiration. Some people are up for a fight and they want provocation. And then I always say it's really sad when one person puts their hand up and says that they want to connect, because, there's nothing sadder than one person who wants to connect and everybody else doesn't want to. But I always reassure that person it's okay, because I'm going to make them connect anyway. Broaden your affect. Be intentional about the feelings that you want people to experience, even to the point of declaring it as a non-content-based intention, and then go hard at it. See what you can do for people. I do sometimes find that I get an imbalance. So I sometimes find that I get a room full of people and 80% of them tell me that they want the inspiration thing. It's useful. It's useful for me to know that they're looking for a bit of energy. And what you might not be surprised to discover is that when I run a workshop on a Friday, the rates of people looking for inspiration are a little higher. Their energy levels are low. They're saying to me, come on, help me get through this long week by making today a really interesting and high energy experience. And you know what? As a leader of a workshop, I can respond to that. It's called differentiation. It's called understanding the different nature of the people in your room and responding to that, which is a really important skill for a leader of learning to have. Magic trick 8 is that I want you to manipulate the context. You cannot control the previous day of the people that come into your workshop. You may not, I ran a workshop recently where I was booked to come and do the day, and it was, all good, no problem at all. I'm gonna work with these people. I've got a very inspirational, challenging, provocative, connecting and strengthening kind of day organised. And they said to me, look, we've got a little bit of housekeeping we need to get through. Do you mind if we just take the first 5 minutes of the day just to hit a couple of things on the head and then get on with that? And I said, no, of course, no problem at all. At which point, one of the directors of the organisation got up and completely berated the people in the audience for failing to follow through on a few things that had been said they would follow through on. And he hit him between the eyes with both barrels. And then he finished, he said, so we won't be having that happen again here, will we? Then he sat down, he goes, thanks, Adam, away we go. Whew. Now, I can't control that. I can do the best I can with it, but I didn't know he was going to say that. I didn't know that he was going to create an affect in the room that's not conducive to learning, and I'm just going to have to suck it up and get over it because I can't control it. You can't control whether people have had an argument with their partner the night before. You can't control whether they're going through a difficult time personally. You can't control whether they've basically mentally clocked off because they've applied for another job and they're just waiting to get the phone call about whether they got it or not. You can't control those things, but you can control the context. I am fierce when I run a workshop about letting the organisers know that I want the room set up cafe style, which means I want people sitting in groups of 4 to 6 and no more than 6, because beyond that point we don't get genuine conversation, we get someone taken over. And so I will ask for all sorts of little breakout spaces like this. When we are doing the learning, I'll encourage people to get up and to move around, because what I do know is that if somebody is going to be sitting there for an extended period of time and they've got a bit of a bung back, they're not listening, they're not paying attention. So I'm going to manipulate the context to make it as comfortable as I can for people, and to have it work in a way that suits the outcome I'm after. So if I'm after them creating new opportunities or making key decisions together, why wouldn't I demand that the context is that they sit in groups of 4 to 6? And so it's really important that as the leader of learning, we get that this is about the only controllable we've got, is the ability to actually make sure that the context is serving us. So think hard about the way you want rooms set up, the way you want slides to be delivered. Think hard about where you're going to position yourself. Standing at the front of the room and taking a powerful position over everyone that's sitting is a message to them that it is your job to control or to influence their behaviour. So they wait to see whether they're going to pay attention to you and whether you're going to do the right thing for them. I often deliver workshops by sitting in the middle of the room at the beginning, just to demonstrate to them that this is a little bit different, and the people that I sit next to at that middle table are often a little bit uncomfortable at first. It's amazing how quickly they get over, and it's also amazing how engaged they get. They start talking because standing up at the front of the room sends a message. The message is, I'm speaking, you're listening. When I sit amongst the people that I'm working with, the message that I send them quite subtly is, we're working together today, we're speaking, we're in conversation, and people respond to it accordingly, which is really exciting. Magic trick 9. I mentioned earlier in the webinar that we want to assess for progress, gaps and opportunities. So what we want to do in some way is to build, I'm obsessed with, teachers know this as well, it's possibly the most teacher talk word in the entire vernacular is the notion of what we call a rubric. It's basically a learning table, where what we do is we sit, and we did this for the Navy when we did a project with them around seaworthiness regulations. We brought in a whole new set of these seaworthiness regulations, and for each of the areas that we worked on, we broke it down into Bloom's taxonomy kind of ideas. So the first couple of lines of rows in the rubric were for the knowledge and understanding and comprehension kind of stuff, the basics. Do they get the basics? The middle couple of statements were about, are they able to apply it? Are they able to use it? And then the last couple, we had 6 in each line. The last couple were about whether they could design or compose or respond given a certain scenario. And then we asked them to self-assess. We could assess them externally, but we can also self-assess. And if we're using the same criteria, we can see where the gaps are. So where we understand that people are requiring guidance, it's not a matter of saying that, you're a Dumbo, you didn't get it. It's worthy of a conversation. And we can look at people the way they scale themselves as they move up. And the wonderful part about actually having something that says at the end that they're mentor capable is that we can then deploy them to be able to help other people, which is really exciting. There's no bigger waste than having mastery, than having genuine expertise in your organisation and not seizing the opportunity that sits with you on that. The only way you can often identify that mastery and expertise exists is to assess, find out. So for a lot of my workshops, I will let people know that these are my success criteria. These are my learning intention is this broad statement, but my success criteria are these statements. And by the end of it, I'd love you to be able to describe for me where you sit against each of those, because that'll tell me what the next piece of work needs to be, which is exactly what I want to find out as a leader of learning. It's not hard. It's not hard to knock yourself up a quick table on Word or on Excel to stop and think, okay, the first 2, what's the basics? The second 2, what do I want them to do with it? And the third two statements are about, what if something curly came along? What if something really tricky came along? What would they be able to handle it then? Would they still be able to stick to this new learning, or would an old default creep in at that point? And it's really easy to go and then find out who it is that I need to have a one-on-one conversation with to be able to close that gap. The last trick I'm going to give you today is there are a number I mentioned earlier on defaults and customs and rituals that we have around learning. One is that apparently someone needs to give you a few seconds of your CV at the start of any workshop, which I think is nonsense. The last one is that most workshops end with applause, and I don't get that. Applause, you think about it, what I need at the end of a workshop when I have worked incredibly hard for anywhere from an hour to a day is for all of the participants to sit there and to slam their hands together as quickly as they can such that it makes a noise that pleases me. It's an odd little custom, isn't it? I don't like applause, and the main reason is that custom is a westernised response, and it's a custom that says, yay, we're finished. And that may be true if you're delivering a keynote, that may be true if someone is reading your book. That may be true if someone is working their way through a manual. But a workshop is designed such that things will be different after the workshop, that something about the way everybody works has changed. So we're not finished. So the notion that we can get to the end of a workshop and to clap and go, yay, we're finished, and then walk out and waste a lot of that energy and effort that's occurred over the previous period of time, I think is flawed logic. So I actually ask people at the end of a workshop, I thank them very much for their attention. I let them know that I'm a judgmental bugger, and I'm often judging an audience by the quality of their questions. So I thank them for the most challenging questions that they've provided me during the day. And then I let them know that if they really would like to show their appreciation for the work that I put into making the workshop happen for them, it's to turn to the colleague next to them and declare their decision, declare their D. If they do that, then I say that's all the applause I need, and I let them go. And what's interesting is that people tend to leave the room, particularly if it's not the end of the day, people tend to leave the room with this more determined look on their face. There's just that they're ready to go and do something and ready to go and act quickly, and that should be one of the ambitions of anybody who's designing a workshop. So there you go. I thought there were 10 magic tricks. There's actually 9. I've lost a slide there. But what I do want you to do is to make sure that you don't leave today empty-handed. If you look at the handout section of the control panel that you've got available to you there, then you are able to download the slide deck from today. I also want you to take a little moment now to just think about whether you do have any questions. Put your hand up if you think you do. I'm just going back in and checking the question area again to make sure that that's all kosher and under control. So feel free, this is your last opportunity, I guess, to be able to ask a question and get some answers in this workshop today. But look, whatever you do, make sure you do pinch that slide deck and use it as a handy reminder moving forward. The couple of things too that we can do from here. The next webinar that we're going to run at a different time. We're just going to try it at a different time. I've been told by a couple of people that running them at this time of the day, sort of straight after lunch, can be a little bit problematic. So the next one we run is going to be on the 21st of June, and we're going to run it at 9:30 in the morning. And this is about future-proofing your people. So this webinar is about not only, I guess, how to deliver content, which is what today is, but it's about, and I'm saying to you that what I think you need to be doing is transforming people. Transforming them into what? What are the skills? What are the attributes? What are the capabilities that your people in your teams will need to be able to establish and sustain competitive advantage for your organisation? We're going to look at that. Times have changed. Times have changed. Knowledge is not king anymore. You know, I can find out any of your strategic plans based from a pretty simple Google search. Knowing it is not good enough. Being able to tell the difference between the good ones and the bad ones, now that's useful. So we're going to look at what are the skills and capabilities that are useful in the next webinar. I guess the other thing I wanted to point out is that this is what we do. So if you, this is a photo that I took at a TAFE organisation that I worked with recently. We coordinated their annual conference, and I ran the day, and I delivered a couple of keynotes, and I did a couple of breakout sessions as well during the day. And this is, I guess, a photo that I took because it reminds me that controlling the context is important. Even when I walked in and I saw the rows of chairs, I thought, oh dear, this isn't congruent with what I wanted. But anyway, we'll make the best of it. We got them up. We got them learning. And the feedback that we got from that day was highly encouraging. I won't read that to you. I know you're very capable of reading. And if you go and download that slide deck as a handout today, you can read that in a little more detail. But what we know is that when you teach people how to workshop effectively, it changes everything. It changes everything in your organisation. So if we can help with that, what I want you to do is to make sure that you let us know. So one of the ways that you can do that is to go and put the word chat in the question box. If you just want to be able to have a yak with me about that and how we might be able to bring that to your organisation, just put the word chat there. We'll follow up and have a yarn with you. And also I want to provide these contact details to you, because if you'd like to reach out to us and make something happen for your people, that's what we do. It's what we're keen to do. So thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you coming along to today's webinar. We'll see you at Future Proofing Your People next time around. and have a fantastic week and an even better weekend when you get there in 24 hours or so. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.